When technical teams realize Microsoft Identity Manager is going away, their first instinct is usually, we'll just move it all to Entra ID. While that instinct is half right, the missing half we'll discuss here is where credential projects can fail. This video is for IT directors and IAM architects planning for life after Microsoft Identity Manager, or MIM, goes away. It maps the destination architecture, what Microsoft Entra ID does, where Active Directory certificate services still belong, and it's the layer most teams forget they need. So the short version is Entra ID is your identity provider. It decides who gets in, but it doesn't issue, personalize, or manage the lifecycle of the physical credentials your people carry. That's a different layer. So if we get the layers wrong, you can end up with a clean cloud identity stack that still can't tell you which smart cards are about to expire. By the end of this video, you'll have a 4-layer architecture for the post-MIM Microsoft Enterprise. Our team turned it into a fill-in worksheet, so you don't have to just look at the layers, you can map your own environment to them. Let me pull it up here in just a moment and fill it in for a typical organization. If you're rebuilding identity infrastructure for a Microsoft Enterprise, please feel free to subscribe. This is a 4-part series and the videos build on each other. So this is the post-MIM architecture worksheet. It's got 4 layers down the left and a column where you write what you run. So let's start at the top left. And we're going to use Entra as an example here. So Entra ID is the identity provider. It handles authentication, single sign-on, conditional access, and the policy decisions about who can reach what. It supports certificate-based authentication and FIDO2 sign-in. It's excellent at being at the front door. So in the worksheet layer 1, I'm going to write Entra ID, and the status cell turns green, named, it's own, and it's done. So that's great. This might also be Active Directory. It may be a combination of Entra ID and Active Directory, but long story short, the front door has limits. It doesn't have a physical smart card. It doesn't have a way to issue a physical smart card, and it doesn't personalize it. So it doesn't set or unblock a user's PIN. It doesn't enroll a FIDO device, a bound passkey onto a hardware key on behalf of a user. It doesn't renew certificates across a mix of different card vendors, and it doesn't give you a single audit trail of every credential's lifecycle. So that's the gap. Entra ID authenticates the credential. Something else has to create and manage the credential. MIM used to be that something. When MIM leaves, that responsibility doesn't disappear, it just becomes unowned. So I'm going to skip the middle layer for a moment and go down to layer 3, the certificate authority, the CA. We'll come back to layer 2 last because that's where the worksheet earns its keep. For many Microsoft enterprises, layer 3 here is going to be Active Directory Certificate Services, so ADCS. And here's where people get wrong in the other direction. ADCS is not going away with MIM, and in the worksheet I'll write some form of PKI. It'll probably be a cloud CA and maybe Microsoft along with it. So if we're doing our on-prem type of infrastructure, and then maybe we're also doing hybrid, so we'll have an Entrust CA also attached. So once we have done that, we can see that it's named, and we're in good shape to continue going. So the point of the architecture isn't just to pick one CA. Whether a certificate comes from Active Directory CS or a cloud CA, you still need one consistent way to issue it onto a credential and to manage it for its whole life. So let's go back up to the layer we skipped. And in this middle one, layer 2, this is where a credential management system, a CMS, comes to play. It is the layer that MIM occupied and the one that becomes unowned when MIM leaves. So watch what happens when I fill in MIM here. The system knows and is smart enough to realize we need to replace that. It flags it in amber, and that's the point of this exercise. What are we doing to replace MIM? So if we want to know what lives in this layer, so we'll say the we can see that the CMS connects up to Entra ID as your IDP or Active Directory and down to your certificate authorities also. It may connect your hardware security modules also. In between, it does the work. Issuance and personalization, certificate renewal, PIN reset and unblock, recovery and revocation, and this is across both PKI smart cards and FIDO2 authenticators from one console. For the Microsoft FIDO2 story, this is the layer that enrolls device-bound passkeys to enter ID on behalf of your users, maybe in a batch or through automation or by self-service. So instead of every employee fighting through self-service, your team orchestrates it centrally. So let's fill in versus sec, as we know this can handle the responsibilities. And we can go on to say that beyond the lifecycle actions in that row, the CMS is flexible on how credentials reach people. So in practice, there are 4 patterns, potentially maybe more. There's in-person issuance, where the user sets the PIN right there, central issuance and the shipment with the user setting the PIN later, full batch issuance, where the system sets and delivers the PIN, and then self-service, hence the name, where the user issues and sets their own credential and PIN. So one platform, 4 different patterns match to how your workforce operates. The CMS is the system we built for this layer. It runs on-premise or fully air-gapped or in the cloud, whether it's your own managed private or we manage it for you as a service. Either way, it plays the same role, orchestration layer between your credentials and your certificate authorities. So underneath the 4 layers, the worksheet has a short design checklist, 1 question per layer. It captures the decision that each layer forces. So fill that into down here. The worksheet, again, is linked in the description. It's free. Grab it and map it to your own 4 layers as you feel up to it. So let's talk about how to read this. And we're going to there's a description. If you go down to the tab, it'll kind of explain this first one here. A user taps a smart card or a security key. Enter ID at the top makes the authentication and access decision, right? The credential on that device was issued and is kept alive by the CMS in the middle. And the certificate inside it was minted by a CA at the bottom, whether it's MSCA or a cloud CA, and the hardware itself, the smart card at the bottom, or the FIDO2 key, hardware-bound FIDO key sits at the base. Every layer has its clear owner. Entra ID, in this case, owns authentication. The CA owns trust and certificate issuance. The CMS owns the credential lifecycle. The hardware at the bottom carries it, and when all 4 are explicit, you avoid the orphan credential problem that MIM leaves behind. Fill this in before you write a migration plan. Once you can name what lives in each layer today, and you've seen in which layer the worksheet flags, the migration in the next video gets more straightforward. So to recap, Entra ID is your identity provider. It authenticates, but it doesn't manage credential lifecycle. ADCS or Entrust stays for smart card logon, digital signing, domain authentication. There's other CAs that can fit in there as well. And the layer MIM leaves behind, the credential management system, is the one that you have to consciously replace because it orchestrates issuance and lifecycle across PKI and FIDO2 from a single pane of glass. And you've got the deadline from video 1 and the destination architecture now from this video. So next question, how do you get from MIM without breaking credential issuance during the move? That's the migration, and that's one of the traps that catches teams along the way. So that is in our next video. Download this worksheet below, fill it in as a template for your own design, and we'll see you in our next video.